Welcome to Monday through Friday Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega. This is episode number 28. We're recording on August 13th, 2020, Thursday at 1:01 p.m. Eastern Time. And I want to start by holding out the promise that we can expect as we shift from farming animals, which involves so much cruelty, to this cellular agriculture, which is not only cruelty-free, but gives us our only reasonable chance of avoiding pandemics for the next decade or two. So yes, what we're doing, if we believe in morality, if we believe that we are rewarded and punished according to what we do and don't do, yes, it seems that what we're doing, paying people, paying these corporations to have these animals contained in facilities that are beyond unsanitary, and subject to very cruel practices, the cutting off of beaks, the cutting off of tails without anesthesia, and many other kinds of harm that happen to these animals. Yes, there is a very strong case to be made that we are suffering this pandemic because of our actions. But that's a difficult message to maintain, because, well, partly because so many of us believe that what we do is up to us, that we have this free will. You know, if we were to acknowledge God's omnipotence, God's sovereignty, the idea that God created the world, is the world, and therefore controls the world, then we might be able to look at what we're doing from a distance, not attributing it to ourselves, and therefore not having to deny it as we tend to do for our sense of self-regard, our sense of morality. But it is a difficult perspective. So let's shift from this matter of blame, you know, of just trying to understand why this happened, to what we can do, you know, in a very virtuous way, to allow us to evolve beyond this this perpetual, otherwise, threat of future pandemics. So think about this. You know, we as humans, we strive to be better people. If we have families, if we're parents, we strive to raise good children. And much of that teaching is through example. You know, at our jobs, in our lives, we're striving to do good. Much of business is really basically to identify a need in individuals or in society, global population, and satisfy that need. It's, you know, sometimes business people, we will individually also basically perhaps not be thinking of others in terms of some of what we do. If we see a certain amount of advantage to ourselves that may come at the expense of others, but ordinarily, the way we work both as individuals and collectively is that we try to identify the good we can do, and then we set about trying to do that. So let's look at our situation, you know, this pandemic we're in now, and being safe from future pandemics. within this perspective, this more positive perspective of not, what we've done to deserve this, but what we can do, through being very virtuous and very intelligent to give our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren a much, much better world, happier world, healthier world. And we have to start with the acknowledgement that although this current pandemic, this coronavirus, originated in a wet market in China, many outbreaks, epidemics, a good number of pandemics have originated not in wet markets, but in farms, in animal farms, both family farms and factory farms. Now, certainly here in the United States, 99% of the animals that we raise are raised in factories, these CAFOs. And so just even like, setting aside the morality aspect of it completely, in terms of science, in terms of reason, practicality, if we're maintaining these environments for animals, chickens, for example, tens of thousands of chickens cramped into a football-sized hangar, this shed, very poor ventilation for about 7 weeks, and they're basically living on what they defecate and what they urinate. They're mired in that day after day. That never gets cleaned. It gets cleaned every 7 weeks, before the next batch comes in. That's just one example of the kind of unsanitary conditions that we raise our animals in. And the problem with that, it's a matter of time. These are the conditions that breed outbreaks that then turn into epidemics and then pandemics. These are I mean, imagine the threats to our health if we were to live on our personal lives like that. I mean, it's just unimaginable. So, and naturally we would be subject to so many more illnesses because of that. That's why, we try to keep our kitchens sterile, our bathrooms clean and all. We try to, we understand there's this, this world of microbes out there, and the way to be safe from them is to be clean. So, completely removing the morality from this, it just makes so much sense to abandon, to leave in the past this, you can't ignore the cruelty, this exceedingly cruel, but also exceedingly unsafe practice of factory farming especially, but also the farming of animals. Again, this pandemic supposedly originated in a wet market in Wuhan, but I learned recently, for example, that there are about 8 wet markets in New York City. If we have factory farms in the United States where the conditions are beyond unsanitary, are horribly conducive of disease, then it doesn't, it's not a stretch of expectation of understanding to suspect that these wet markets in New York City pose these same kinds of threats. So, from that perspective, what is the great good we can do? We can we can begin to, well, the farms are the threat, okay? What's very important is, before 2013, before just 7 years ago, we, the only way we could have we could in the future prevent these pandemics would have been to all go vegan. You know, if we stopped eating animals, which we really don't need, and, you know, which cause so much illness, you know, heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States. Its #1 cause is meat consumption. Cancer kills, it's the #2 killer. Much of, you know, the dairy, the eggs, the meat that we eat, especially the processed meats, you know, they generate cancer. So if it were not for this new technology that emerged in 2013, our only way of being safe from future pandemics would be for us all to go vegan. And you know, as I say this, I have to say this is still the best way. Yes, we might be afforded another opportunity, but maybe let's hope that it's an interim kind of opportunity that allows us to segue, you know, part by part, you know, just a little at a time to complete vegan diets, plant-based diets, which are the healthiest and the least cruel. But again, this industry that started in 2013, it's so wonderful. It's so amazing. We can take a few cells, a biopsy, you know, from a cow, a chicken, a pig, in a way that doesn't cause the animal any pain. You know, I mean, the pain is, and like, for example, with that one biopsy, we can grow theoretically millions of pounds of beef or chicken or pork or fish, you know, millions of pounds of milk, you know. So that's how amazing this technology is. So what's this great thing that we do? This great thing that we, you know, that we look forward to doing as we're still in this pandemic. And for many of us, you know, we haven't had the bandwidth to consider, well, how are we going to be safe from future pandemics? But what we can do is understand first the nature of this new industry. It emerged in 2013, the first proof of concept where a researcher, Mark Post from the Netherlands, basically demonstrated to the world in London that yes, you can, you know, grow meat outside of animals, you know. So that was a proof of concept. So now there are about 40 to 50 startups, and they have generated in these 6-7 years about $1.5 billion. And that's, you know, for example, the first burger patty in London in 2013 cost about $330,000 to make. Now the company Mosa Meats that manufactured that patty is estimating that in about a year or so that cost will come down to about $10 a patty. And this is just the beginning. This industry is nascent. It's just starting out. So the great good that we could do is to understand this. Okay, it is a new industry, and it can promise us, you know, meat products, dairy products, fish products, you know, these products that we ordinarily get from animals in a way that's not only cruelty-free, you know, and thereby inviting God's wrath, but is also pandemic risk-free. So we don't have to do this, you know, we don't have to ever go through this again. So that's the promise, but the problem is, fine, $10 for a patty, that's still a lot, you know, and we have to make comparable progress with regard to poultry and fish products, seafood and milk products. And it's you know, it's not that it's really actually even so difficult. It's just, it takes time. At this current rate of research funding, financing, you know, the industry insiders that I've spoken with, I've emailed, you know, communicated with, suggest that it may take 10 years or longer may take 15, 20 years for many of these challenges to be met. You know, a lot of it is a matter of scaling up. You know, it's one thing to grow a burger patty in a Petri dish. It's another to expand that facility to make it, you know, like one of those micro breweries you would see in bars once in a while, where they brew the beer right there. We need these really very large vats that are fermenters. They're called technically bioreactors, but that's, you know, and there are challenges that go along with that. But again, the key point to understand is, just like with vaccines, how a process that ordinarily takes 10, 15, 20 years, we still don't have a vaccine for AIDS. And the fastest that it ever had been done was in 4 years after the 1957 pandemic. Then now we fast-tracked this development of a vaccine for a coronavirus, so we can very reasonably expect one during this next year. So a year and a half to develop a vaccine that ordinarily takes 10, 15, 20 years. So that tells you how possible it is to, with sufficient investment, narrow that time frame of 10, 15 years for these cell cultured, clean meat products to be in supermarkets. You know, to go from that to having them in markets in 3 or 4 years, perhaps 3 years. And so, like, let's talk, you know, the details. And this is what we need to demand, you know, as much as we can demand it as citizens of this country, demand it of our politicians, demand it of our media, demand it of ourselves, of our you know, our friends, our family, the people we know. In terms of the good we can do, you know, the Congressional Budget Office in May, before this current surge, where all the southern states now are just, you know, the cases are increasing, and, you know, there's it's like it wasn't in April. It was like, you know, it's gotten really serious again. So before all this, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that once this is done, you know, once we're finally past this, you know, whether it's a year or 2 or 3 or 4, it will have cost us $8 trillion. And that, you know, of course, that doesn't, you know, that doesn't account for, you know, for the pain and suffering, you know, that goes along with this. You know, this is just the financial cost. So the important point to understand is, again, right now, this new industry has $1.5 billion in funding. Let us raise that funding. Let's decide to fund that industry with $50 billion. Starting in January, February. You know, we can't expect this from Trump and this current administration. We understand this. But once Biden is our next president, you know, this should probably be one of the very first things he does. With $50 billion, not over a 10-year period or a 20-year period, but $50 billion that's released over the next 2 or 3 years. You know, what happens when we do that? So many young researchers who are just getting out of school, who have their degree, but maybe there aren't enough jobs in biochemistry available, you know, right now to be able to, like, have everyone be hired. And the best talent in these fields of biochemistry and food production, with $50 billion injected into this industry, you would get so many more people involved, brighter people, smarter people, who are unfortunately sometimes tempted by the giant food companies that offer them so much money. You know, the food companies, Tyson and Cargill and all, they siphon off the best talent of biochemists, you know, basically bribing them to work for them, you know, at at making products rather than at doing other much more virtuous and useful things that biochemists could do, even within the food industry. So with this $50 billion, we can counteract that effect of our best talent being underused, not used at all. So think about it. Think of how we're going to feel as we do this. Think of how we're going to feel acknowledging that, yes, we created this pandemic because we are essentially paying people to abuse and torture animals so that we can buy them much, much less expensively. Yes, we can look at that now, but not stay there. Then quickly move on. Well, yes, fine. This is happening because of what we did, but now we can just, within a matter of a few years, turn that around, redeem ourselves. We can change who we are, what our world is about. With $50 billion, it's 0.5% of this $8 trillion that we'll be spending on the coronavirus. So it couldn't be a better bargain. If we were spending 7 times that much, $350 billion, that's actually the amount the average homeowner spends for homeowners insurance. And that's actually over a 10-year period. Over a 1-year period, they spend much more, I guess, relatively. But think of how it would feel. Hopefully this will happen. To make that decision, to decide, yes, we're not going to condemn our children who already have to struggle with the challenges and threats of climate change and this national debt and so many of the world's problems. We don't want to saddle our children, our progeny with this kind of world where everything can just come tumbling down without any notice. So many lives destroyed, businesses destroyed, people's relationships, just all in upheaval. We have an opportunity to stop that in as soon as 3 years, perhaps 2 years. Again, $50 billion can go a long way. So let's do that. Let's do that, and let's, don't believe that oh yeah, the scientists, even these, I've communicated a lot with the CEOs of these new startups. There's about 40 or 50 of them, and they're business people. A lot of them are actually biochemists, but they're not generally globalists, in the sense that they're not generally doing this. They're doing this for idealistic purposes, but they're not taking on the role of being messengers to the world on this. They're focusing on meeting the research challenges. What they're doing is exceedingly important. And maybe the idea is we shouldn't expect them to also be the messengers of this. They have done their work as biochemists, as entrepreneurs. They have created this new industry, and they're proceeding. So perhaps it should be our responsibility, who will benefit so much from this new industry, just fast tracking and just bringing us foods to market in 3 years, ideally. We should take on this responsibility to ensure that the media covers this, to ensure that the politicians talk about this, and ultimately, hopefully very soon in 2021, to ensure that the funds are released to fast track this industry. So just as we're getting a vaccine that ordinarily takes 10, 15 years and a year, year and a half, because we've invested so much in that effort, we can have these products, in supermarkets in 3 years rather than 10 or 15. That's, it's, and worst case scenario, let's say, I mean, this is, no, you have to begin with, this is exceedingly possible. Theoretically, it's already been done. It's just a matter of scaling up. I mean, it's not complicated in that sense. But even if it were failed, even if it didn't turn out for it, wouldn't it be worth the chance? I mean, like, 0.5% as an investment to try to create a world where you never have to have an $8 trillion loss. And again, this is just the United States. This $8 trillion is not the entire world. So again, 0.5% of the United States is going to be ending up spending on this. Even if you're not very confident about this technology, and again, you don't really have a reason to not be confident, because like it is pretty clear cut. They're making great strides in it already. It's worth it. There's no way that it's not worth it. So again, consider it. Consider, let's move from the blaming ourselves. Let's not blame ourselves for this. Like, we're born into this world and everybody's eating meat, and that's why we eat meat. And we are the cause of this, though. So let's not forget that we're the cause. And just like we're the cause because of these factory farms and family farms, we can be the solution by simply transitioning, not even like, becoming vegan, just simply transitioning from farming animals and factory farms, especially, to growing our meat, fish, and dairy in these sanitary, pandemic-free environments. All right, that was pretty good. I'm trying to work on a much more positive, less, less indicative delivery. So, all right. So I hope you're having a good week, a good Friday. I take a couple of days off for the weekend. Catch this next Monday, every Monday through Friday on channel at 5 o'clock on White Plains Community Media, channel 45 if you get Verizon, 76 if you get Optimum, and let's see where this takes us. This is, again, episode number 28, and the show is evolving, and hopefully we can really make something, do something really wonderful for the world, through understanding all this. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you on Monday. Thanks.